How many people have you met that say they want to start a business, but they just don't show up?
One of the world's leading experts when it comes to branding. From washing cars at 8 years old to now a global speaker, my friend, Mr. Dain Walker.
Branding is essential. It's a core component to success.
People's faces almost are becoming the brand image. So you went to 38 different schools.
36, yeah.
36 different schools. Sounds like everything before you create this wildly successful life and business, things were a bit challenging.
I think so. I like to look at it as like a gift. Like discomfort just felt like normal, everyday emotions for me. It wasn't something that was strange.
Have you been able to look back and discover, like, is there like a formula?
To answer your question, I think that...
All right, guys, today's guest is one of the world's leading experts when it comes to branding. Being absolutely obsessed on the topic and how it can rapidly propel a company into the marketplace for financial success, he founded his own branding agency called Rival, which has become one of the fastest growing branding agencies here in Australia. Struggling with imposter syndrome in the early beginning and having a tough upbringing, eventually getting a kick up the arse he needed by Gary Vee, he decided to go all in and start building his agency. And within 3 years, built it up to a multi-million-dollar agency where he's worked with some of the biggest brands in the world like JP Morgan, Facebook, and World Gym. So please help me welcome the guy who went from washing cars at 8 years old to now a global speaker and a leading educator in the world of branding, my friend, Mr. Dain Walker.
Thank you, man. It was a nice warm intro.
Good to see you, my man.
Thanks,
I'm excited to have a conversation with you because one thing I've obsessed on over the last decade is psychology and behavioral psychology, how the brain works, influence, and all these things. I think it came from the early days when I was 18, learning about pickup artists. I was like, oh, we can, like self-confidence and influence and all this stuff. And then when I go into business, I've become really obsessed in branding because I see a massive correlation because it's psychology mix. So I'm super excited to dive into all this with you, but I'm curious to know what got you actually obsessed on branding to begin with?
Yeah, I think for me, part of it was kind of unknowingly doing branding from let's just say a younger age. We talked a little bit about like how I had a hustle washing cars when I was a kid. But when I was 13, I was on an online gaming community and they had forums back then. So if anyone knows Reddit, if you know Reddit, before we had social media, we had forums. So like you couldn't go on and do social media, but you could go on and post a topic and then people would reply to it in a board. And we had an online community where people would basically create topics and gather together to play games. But I was responsible for designing the logo, designing the website, updating the website, creating the UX, the UI, the copywriting, doing all of the advertising, promoting and marketing material back when I was 13. So at a very young age, I was responsible for all of the lead creative for this online gaming community. And it had at one point up to 6,000 members. And so I was responsible for a lot of visual identity design at a very young age. But back then I didn't look at it as like branding. I was just like, I'm a kid. I'm obsessed with gaming. My clan needs design. Let's get the design done. But I enjoyed the process of doing it. So then I guess since then I've kind of been learning about what gets attention, how can you create perception, how can you create a community, how can you interact and engage with people. But right through even like when I was, working in different careers, I was always the guy that was like, oh, he knows Photoshop, get him to do it. Like we need a poster, we need a whatever. I was the one that ended up just doing it. But it wasn't really till I was 19 and I was working in a t-shirt shop that I started really exploring graphic design and doing a lot of different, stuff to do with the website or social media content. I was always ending up the person in a company that was doing the content, building the website, all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't until I went to the Gary Vee event that you talked about and I realized that I'm actually pretty good at Photoshop and like creative design that I started to come to the conclusion that I should probably start an agency. And a part of it was because my partner at the time, she worked for an ad agency. And I was always like hearing about what they were doing and thinking in the back of my head, oh, I can do all that stuff. Like that's no brainer, easy stuff for me to do, like all this advertising stuff. But then I saw Gary at the event and just made this wild conclusion and decision at that event. I was like, I'm starting an agency. So then all my experience in, design and copy and UX and UI and advertising and content creation kind of like collapsed in on itself on that one decision. And then, I found myself 2 months later with clients, paying retainers every month and walking out of my job.
How did you get your first few clients?
I was making content and people were just sending me messages saying, I love your content. How much to make mine? And
like logos specifically they're asking for? Or?
No, they were asking for like, so I would do like these beautiful graphic designed posts that we call carousels. So, there's posts you can swipe through on LinkedIn or Instagram. Yeah. So I was making those and I was doing like font work and design work and making them look really beautiful. But people would send me a DM and say, hey, I love what you're doing. Can you do this for my legal agency? Can you do this for my real estate agency? And I was like, sure. I started quoting it and that's how I started making money. Yeah. People saw what I was doing and they wanted it for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you've done branding work for Facebook, JP Morgan, World Gym, some of the biggest brands in the world, billion-dollar companies, Facebook, JP Morgan. What was that like?
So just to be clear, JP Morgan was a sub project to do with a charity they were doing. And then with Facebook, I was collaborating with one of their speakers in Tel Aviv. So not necessarily on the master brands, but partially with the branding on other things. But the biggest one we've worked on, which is Culture Kings. So we did their brand update for their launch in the Caesars Palace in Vegas. So we really spent a lot of time updating their brand identity for the American market because they wanted to be at the caliber of Nike. And then to do that, you have to be perfect. Nike are perfect. So yeah, I had the privilege of working with Culture Kings and working with big brands like that. It's a different sport than like a startup brand or a medium-sized brand.
That's what I wanted to ask. So what is the difference between, say, the way a billion-dollar company looks at their brand and let's say $1 million company and then a startup?
Yeah, I think the beauty with Culture Kings, they're definitely an anomaly. They have startup mentality. So when I worked with Simon Beard, he was extremely easy to collaborate and to work with. He had a very clear vision of what he wanted, and it was very easy to creatively work with him. However, on the contrary, most brands we've worked with at that size, I won't name their names, but other billion-dollar brands that we've worked with, usually a lot of red tape, very difficult for them to make decisions. Everyone's at each other's throats about what should and shouldn't happen. So you end up being this ultra psychologist, marriage counselor, kind of character.
There's so many people making decisions, right?
Yeah, there's too many people in the kitchen. The marketing team want this, the CEO wants that, the CFO is getting involved for some reason. Like it's just there's so many people that have their opinion, and they're all terrified that changing the color is going to destroy the brand and all this other stuff. So
in terms of how a $1 billion company, so let's say, so you said you came and worked with Culture Kings to help them sort of level up the new identity.
Yeah.
How are $1 billion companies looking at branding differently to a 7-figure company?
Depends who you're speaking to. So for someone like Culture Kings, I would say the way they look at branding is not as this. They don't look at it as design. They understand the psychological impact of what the visual does for a company. So like if you're, for example, like Culture Kings is very photography centric. So how do we make sure that the photography is branded? So you don't just see a photo and you're like, I don't know what brand it is. If you look at a Culture Kings photo, you could probably guess that it's a Culture Kings photo just by the dynamics of the shots, the model that you're looking at, how they're positioned, the lighting in the background. You can tell what brand it is. Like Tiffany & Co.'s jewelry, right? If you look at a Tiffany & Co. photo, you can tell it's them. So big brands that I've talked to know the power and the leverage that visual psychology has on an audience. They know that it makes money. They don't know how to exactly calculate it, but they know it's important. I think smaller brands look at branding as like something that's a nice to have. They don't look at it as a necessity. I think anyone that's wildly successful in business understands that branding is essential. It's a core component to success. Yeah.
So the other day, my business manager actually, she said to me, she's like, hey, I suggest let's start using this new software. I'm like, well, why are we going to use the new software? She's like, well, look what you can do. You can do email marketing on here. CRM in here and you can build funnels on here.
Yeah.
I'm like, but we have ClickFunnels and this new software is going to cost less than just ClickFunnels alone. And I'm like, but I'm cool for that, but I still want to do ClickFunnels. And she's like, why? And I'm like, fucking hilarious because I don't know why.
Yeah.
Like, probably because Russell Brunson has killed it with his branding.
Yeah.
And
loyalty.
I'd feel like I'm cheating on him if I leave.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, he's good. And
Yeah.
that's a good brand, right? To make you think I'm going to cheat. Like if you went and bought a Samsung and you're an Apple, you'd feel like you're cheating. And I remember Mr. Beast made a thread when Threads came out. Yeah. He's like, I feel like I'm cheating on Twitter. That's when you know, right? You've created this. So how does, because like that's where brands need to get to. Businesses need to get to the point where they create this raving fan base where they're like, yo, you got to go there and you'd go nowhere else. Like if someone was coming to the world, if someone just got out of prison and they've been in prison for 50 years and like, what's a smartphone? What should I get? You're going to have people go, you've got to get an Apple.
Yeah.
Here's why. So what goes into like, why are these billion-dollar brands? Like what do they know that we don't know when it comes to branding psychologically that have us going, I feel like I'm cheating on them if I don't use them?
Yeah, I think that you said the word psychology. So I think what I've identified, and they talk about it. Like if you go to their conferences, where Nike are talking about branding, and they do branding conferences where they do speak, they talk about psychology. And I think people have a cognitive bias toward, for example, Apple's a great one. If you look at the Google Pixel, it's like 1/3 the cost of an iPhone. And if you ask anyone what's better, a Pixel or an iPhone, they will say the iPhone hands down. But if you look at this, the actual sheer quality of the make and the hardware and the software, Google's arguably better with some of the specs than an iPhone. But people will ride or die Apple, me included. Like I have an Apple. But to answer your question, I think that brands plant an idea in your mind that they stand for something. And if you believe what they believe and you share that belief system with them, you're going to defend them. Like if you love Russell Brunson and you're a devoted fan of him and his company and you don't have any beef with his software, why would you switch? It's like you said, you feel like you're cheating on it, or you feel like you're going against your own belief system. You feel like you're abandoning part of yourself. It's a difficult one. There's a lot of layers to it, and there's a lot of different reasons why someone would be devoted and loyal to a brand. But one of the big ones is they have an experience with it. If you've had good experience with a brand and they've built equity with you, and you have an affinity or an affection or a love for something that they've done, it's going to be really hard for another brand to replace that, because you're like, well, this brand I'm emotionally attached to, this one's cheaper, but is cheaper the reason why you would switch? Maybe not. I had this happen with Monday. So I thought Monday was the shit because of all of their great marketing. And I was like, this is great brands. But they recently just stitched me up, man. I spent like 60 grand on updating all my software, migrating it across to Monday, paying the tech guys to set up all of the automation and everything. They upgraded their software systems, took out a feature, and then asked us to pay the next invoice. And we're like, your system is broken. We can't even use it anymore. And they're like, here's your next invoice. If you don't pay it, we're going to kick you out of the system. And I was like, I'm out of here, man. Moved over to ClickUp. ClickUp is, in my experience, 10 times better than Monday.com. But I had this perception in my head that Monday was better, but it was actually an inferior product from my experience. Yeah.
So what are the layers then? Like what actually makes up? Can we dive into the psychological part of, because I know people think branding is a logo.
Yeah.
And it's like probably not even the fucking beginning of a brand.
No.
Right? So what is the psychological factor that we need to look for to create this experience with our customers?
Yeah. Well, I think, Coca-Cola is a good one. It's been around for 100 years. Coca-Cola have a unique problem as a brand that they're tackling at the moment. They're so ingrained into the mind of the consumer that they've become invisible, right? So you'll see a Coca-Cola sign, but you've seen it so much that you're like, it's equivalent to a tree. You know what I mean? So they've had to get really dynamic and creative with their advertising because they've actually over-advertised for too long. Yeah, so that's why they started using the bottle shape. That's why they're doing such wild campaigns.
What are they doing now?
I don't know what they're doing right now, but like recently they did billboard campaigns across the US where they were just using the bottle shape, right? They were reintroducing the old bottle shape to try to get visual recognition. But one of the ways Coke psychologically advertise is they target the hippocampus and the amygdala in the brain. So I hope I'm getting this right here, but I think the amygdala in the brain is the part of the brain that processes storytelling or like your affiliation with a story. And for example, let's just say you're at a friend's birthday party when you're 8 years old and it's a hot day and you're thirsty and someone opens a Coke and hands it to you. All of a sudden in your mind, you're like, man, Coke's pretty cool on a hot day. But then if they repeat that messaging to you throughout, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like throughout your years, you watch television, you see commercials, you see YouTube ads, it's always a hot day and someone's refreshing themselves with Coke. Yeah. Now that part of your brain is like, okay, hot day plus Coke equals I'm thirsty. So then they've actually programmed your brain through advertising. So then if you walk out of a shopping center and you see a Coke vending machine, you're like, oh, it's a hot day outside, I better get a drink. Like it's unconscious. Yeah.
If it's this, then it's this. Then
it's like they're planting a little seed in your brain. If this happens plus this happens, you should do X. So a lot of big brands do this. Another terrifying one, which was Nestle. So Nestle were trying to launch coffee into Japan, and Japan's predominantly a tea-loving nation.
Yeah.
So Nestle weren't able to really succeed in Japan, so they decided that they would play the psychological game. They literally hired a psychologist, I can't remember his name, but they launched a candy in Japan that tasted like coffee. And then they waited essentially 14 years to introduce caffeine and coffee back into the nation. But because the kids grew up with the candy, now they are susceptible to drinking coffee and taking the concept on. So, you can sway a nation to buy a product by them having a story affiliated with the product.
So the amygdala, so creating a story, and then what was the other part of the brain you said?
I think it's the amygdala and the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the part of the brain that's like this plus this equals, and it's like using the amygdala storytelling component. And again, fact check me here because I could be wrong, but I remember reading about this and I was like, what the fuck? Like these brands are literally trying to engineer a relationship with you. They're trying to build a concept of what that means to have their product in your minds. Nike are really great at doing this. Big brands like Nike will even use smell. They'll use texture, they'll use sight, they'll use color, they'll use material, they'll use fabrics, they'll use smell. Even when you walk into a Nike store, some of the Nike stores have positioned their most expensive shoes to smell different at a certain part of their store. Really? So they're always playing like these like little psychological games on you. Mm-hmm. But that's what the big brands are doing at scale that a lot of small companies aren't doing.
Yeah. So what I understand with branding is the 3 different types of brains. The first one is like the reptilian part of your brain.
Yeah.
Which is the fight or flight.
Yeah.
And it's got to please all branding, all marketing has to please that brand that brain first, because that is literally happens before we even know about it, and it says, is this safe or is it not safe?
Yeah.
And my understanding of it is if things are overwhelming, it confuses the brain, not safe.
Yeah.
And we've all seen Facebook ads that have come up over and over and over and over.
Overwhelming.
And we scroll past it really fast.
Yeah.
But if you were to ask yourself, because I do it sometimes, if I scroll fast and I ask myself, because I love analyzing why I'm doing what I'm doing, why did you scroll past that ad? I'm like, it's just annoying. But what is it? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't actually know who it is or what he's selling or what it is, but I just don't like it because it didn't get through that first part of my brain where whenever I see it, it's like, no.
Yeah.
So my understanding is it's going to be super simple and easy to digest because that brain is like stupid almost, like the oldest brain we have. But in the next part of the brain, it looks for, is this trustworthy? So it's going to look for what's everyone else doing? It's going to put it into the hierarchy. And the last one is the neocortex, the decision maker. And so I see a lot of people with marketing trying to like do direct call to actions and all these sorts of things, and they're trying to speak to the third brain straight away. Make a decision, which this is why I love branding over marketing, because I've spent the last few years just trying to build a brand and a message because I want people to just build that relationship with me where it feels good. It's so, because I understand it's got to pass the first brain with like, this is simple, I can digest this. And then, here's a leading authority, then I'll make a decision versus just direct call to action. Are you familiar with me?
Yeah, I think you bang on, man. Like I think there's so many. This is the beauty of branding is there's so many pathways into people's minds. Yeah. But like you said, like the reptilian part of the brain is like, is this safe or not? Right. And overwhelm equals unsafe for sure. And too much information equals unsafe. And, the other part of our brain is like our brain is processing an ungodly amount of unconscious information at any given time. I think it's, a guy that used to work with Tony Robbins, a guy named Tad James was saying that the unconscious part of the brain is processing like 16 trillion bits of information per second.
Yeah.
And the conscious part of your brain, the frontal lobe, is processing like
134.
Yeah. Yeah. You probably get the numbers I know, right? But it's like the unconscious part of your brain is processing an extreme amount of information. And my friend Matt Purcell always says, when you're branding, it's better to be clear and not trying to be clever. Too many people try to be super clever with their marketing, but sometimes the clear, simple stuff is more potent and a better way to get market penetration into someone's minds. Yeah.
And then it also comes down to, so one of the last times I was here in Sydney, I was waiting for a bus. I was at Manly and the bus drives past me and I see this huge, I think it was Nestle actually, Nestle coffee all over. And I don't drink coffee at all. And I was just looking at it, I was like, that's nice. Like, I always just look, I'm sure you do as well. You probably look at all logos and brands and stuff. I'm like, yeah, cool. Thought nothing else of it. 2 hours later, I'm in Coles and I'm walking down the coffee aisle and I just thought to myself, I was like, look at all the coffee here. There's so many to decide. And I asked myself, if I was to pick coffee today, what would I pick? And it was Nestle.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? I saw it on the bus earlier.
Yeah.
And now back to there could be better coffee.
Yeah.
It probably is way better coffee. Yeah. But it was the relationship. I felt like I trusted it because I saw it more than once.
Yeah.
So have you found, because I know like 20 years ago or something, it was like 7 different exposures for people to do business with you. And now it's something stupid like 21 to 28 or something.
It's about 48 at this point.
48. So fucking hell. Last time I was talking about this, I'm like, it's 21. So so we've really essentially got to have a brand impression with our audience, with our customers 48 times before they're like, I want to do business, right? So
which is great for content, because if they see your content on social media like 50 times, they're like, this person is pretty trustworthy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But the cool thing is you don't have to pay for that.
For just organic content.
Yeah. So like a lot of people, here's the thing is that if you look at social media, it's free. I like to look at social media like a library. The library is public. Anyone can access it. But a lot of people go onto social media and they try to treat their social media like an ad platform. Like, please buy my stuff. So every time they post, there's an insinuation that they want you to buy something from them, especially companies or brands. But then at personal brands, if they do it right, they'll look like an author. They'll look like they're just giving away amazingly curated content for free. Like Mr. Beast, if you go on Instagram, his content's free. It's hilarious. It's fun to watch. It's like bite-sized. The guy understands the whole library analogy. But yeah, if you give lavishly consistently enough on social media 48 times, then someone's going to build an affiliation to your brand. You're going to have the same effect than paying for an ad 48 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between, so like let's now talk personal branding and then company brand.
Yeah.
How can we, because like let's say as a personal brand, you don't necessarily have like a logo, even though you could, but
you could, yeah.
How do we kind of go about, is it just what you're saying? Like, is it the voice? Because I've heard like, because now we're living in a very audio world with podcasts and content, and people's faces almost are becoming the brand image. So is this any correlation here, or how do we sort of really stand out as a personal brand?
Yeah, I think the difference between people and companies is there's a stat, I think it's 86% of people that see a company brands assume that they're trying to sell something to them, and they're more likely to trust a personal brand, even if that personal brand is a stranger. So you're more likely to trust a complete stranger who's a personal brand than you are to trust a company on social media.
Interesting.
Even if it's like, oh, hi, I'm an expert at, such and such nutrition, I suggest XYZ. You're going to listen to that person's advice. But then if you see a nutrition supplement brand say the same thing, you're far less likely to trust it, because you're like, they're just trying to sell me a product.
Do you think that's why? Because we've just been so indoctrinated for years of just marketing and ads and forced through TV ads, just product, buy my shit. And we're more connected to humans.
I think it's part of the reason. I think the other part of the reason is like, a human being is something you can emotionally connect with.
Yeah.
Right. That's like when you watch a movie, you fall in love with the character on the screen, even though really that character doesn't exist for you. Like that's an actor in a studio filmed years in the past. But like Disney, they studied at Disney that how do they get a child to love a character? Because if the child loves a character, they'll buy the merchandise, they'll buy the toys, they'll watch the movie 4 or 5 times, and then they'll buy the second and the third movie. Like they're like, how do we get a child to fall in love with Frozen, not just watch it once?
Yeah.
How do we get a little girl to be obsessed with the characters and the merchandise? Like my little girl, anytime she sees anything with Frozen anyway, she's like, Daddy, we have to buy this, because she loves the character. And then the parents get caught up in it because they're like, oh, I want my kids to have joy, right? So Disney know how to target children with psychology, with branding. But the same techniques that work for Disney's characters work with personal brands. So if you look at Alex Hormozi, Gary Vee, any personal brand, if they can give you an idea of what their archetype is, there's a much higher chance you'll fall in love with them. And what their archetype is, it's like, okay, well, Gary Vee, if you look at his past, grew up in Belarus, worked for his father, started blindlibrary.com. Like that's kind of his origin story. Then he transcended the internet and started to learn about Google AdWords and became like this, tech savvy marketer of the internet. Now he's like this superhero figure of, this guy who's extremely technologically savvy and knows marketing and is trying to buy the New York Jets. And then he's got his allies in his cast, he's got enemies he's fighting. He's filling up the wheel of like who he is and what he represents. Alex Hormozi does the same thing. Kim Kardashian, Dwayne Johnson, Elon Musk. It doesn't matter who you look at. Like people fall in love with these characters because they're fleshing out this story, and anyone that likes the story is going to buy from them. It's going to follow them. Companies can't do that.
And then the plus sides, you look at what all The Rock, the Ryan Reynolds, Mr. Beast, all these people are now doing now. Are like the next billionaires, the next generation are all going to be influencers.
Yeah,
because it's just it makes a lot of sense. Because then when think about how much money people have spent in the past trying to get a celebrity to collaborate with them on a brand, knowing it's going to elevate the trust.
Yeah.
Now the celebrity can just be like, well, fuck, instead of getting $1 million paycheck, I was partnered with someone,
create my own brand. Yeah.
And now it's $1 billion company, and like it's gnarly. But on that note, let's talk about what do you see? Like what's the average company? What's the average product getting wrong when it comes to their branding?
I think the most common thing I see is people are unknowingly copycatting their competitors and their whole industry. So the amount of times I've sat with a client and they're like, I've got this great idea. And we go do our research. We're like, everyone else is already doing that. Like, is it really an original idea, or did you witness it in your market and say, I could do it better? So I think the common misdemeanor for a business owner is we're better than the competitors. And then you ask them why. Oh, our product's better. We do it faster. We're better people. Better. Like everything's better. Branding is not about being better. It's about, okay, how do we invent something different? How do we create a different experience for the customer? How do we lean into that experience? How do we symbolize and represent something different, a different belief system? Like everyone gets caught up in the generic stuff. We call it the vanilla values. We call it, the stuff that everyone else is doing. And I think too few people are willing to take a risk, do something new, and actually invent something disruptive and unique. But it's the ones who do that make the most money. Liquid Death, extremely disruptive, extremely outside the box. Now worth like
Liquid Death sounds horrible.
So it's a brand. Yeah, it sounds awful. It's a brand that all it is, it's water in a can, and in 3 years it went from a startup to a $700 million water brand. But if you sat across this table from me, or if I sat across from this table from you and said, I've got an idea, I'm going to put water in a can and it's going to become $1 billion brand in the next 3 years, you'd laugh me out of the room.
Yeah.
But because no one was doing water in a can that had a flaming skull on the front, like it was just such a wildly different concept than what you would expect water to be, that people started buying it. Like being different is what the market is calling for right now. People don't want a better product. They want a different product. They want an alternative thing. Yeah.
What are some do's and don'ts when it comes to creating brand image, logos?
Yeah, I think it's like keeping it simple, man. You know, sometimes when it comes to logo, like logo design is its own art form and it's got its own nuances to it. But I think a logo needs to be very adaptable. You need to be able to have a logo that can do a lot of things. A logo can subtly communicate what kind of brand you are and what your approach is and what makes you unique. But I often see a lot of business owners over designing their logo, making it too complicated or being too obvious with it. So if it's a car wash brand, they're like, okay, well, I need to have a silhouette of a car with bubbles. Like, you know what I mean? It's like that go-to status quo concept. I think, you know, business owners need to get a little bit more creative, a little bit more outside the box and really explore things maybe differently. Yeah.
Who do you think, apart from Nike, Apple, Coca-Cola, who else do you think are just killing it in the branding world that you look at and you learn from?
Liquid Death's one of them. If you look at their marketing, it's quite remarkable. I think Dyson's another brand that was a category killer. You know, so for a long time, Wertime and Hoover and all these other brands held the market. And then Dyson came along and they were like, fuck bags, you know. And they were also like, can we make it a stick? You know, like James Dyson just looked at the whole industry and was like, how do I reinvent this whole thing?
Well, I think, I heard someone was talking about this and it's like, he was the first one to come out and make a fucking vacuum for like $1,500 or some shit.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, no one's going to buy that. No one's going to buy that.
No one buys it.
But the problem is like, it's never the money. It's because people just have this perception to the price thinking, oh, it's going to be a better experience. And fucking is. You get a Dyson, you're like, I want to clean their house now.
Yeah.
Like no one's to plug shit into their wall and do all this crap.
Yeah. But price is one strategy.
Yeah.
There's so many strategies to branding. Pricing is just one of them. Some people want the most expensive. Some people want the most experiential. Some people want the best looking. Some people want, you know what I mean? Like everyone's wants are a little different.
Yeah.
We all think that we want the cheapest, but you know, we don't all drive the cheapest cars and wear the cheapest shoes and use the most cheapest phones. We all, you know, like to think we're savvy with our money, but we're really not.
Yeah. How about like the evolution of a brand? Because I've been thinking about this a little while ago. Like something like with my company, my business, my philosophy of everything is ready, fire, aim. So I think if people are really getting stuck on creating, I've got to create a logo before I get into action. It's like if that's stopping you, you should just fucking start and figure it out more as you go along.
Yeah.
But then I also look like, if you know the Nelk Boys.
Yeah, yeah.
Those guys, they got the same brand since day one.
Yeah.
Like same font, same colors, same everything.
Yeah.
Like for the people who are sort of maybe at a spot right now and they're thinking like, you know, their logos and their branding all is so shit. We know branding is so important, but can brands continually evolve, or is it sort of like a thing where they should stick to a certain archetypes and down this, or have you seen brands just continually evolve and that's okay as well?
Yeah, I think the cool thing with branding is it really depends on what you want to have happen. So there's no really right or wrong answer, and this is where I really complicate branding for people is because there's no one way to do it. Like for example, if Nike were to say we want to adjust ourselves from being an athletic centric brand to being a lifestyle brand. Let's just hypothetically say Nike were like, that's our new ambition. Okay, great. Well, a few things would probably happen. The athletes would probably hate it. So you just have to be conscious of that. But they could adapt to be a lifestyle brand. They could totally do it and weather the storm and become that. But whether Nike would ever do that, that's one question. But it's like, let's just say if a brand had a new goal, right? That's one reason why a brand would adapt itself. So, you know, let's just say, and this is something that happens with a lot of small to medium-sized businesses, is they start off with a certain type of client and then they start to evolve their product offering. And then they go, well, now our client's actually over here, but the brand they built is for the client over there. So then they need to update their branding to match their client or their target audience. And I think the most important thing for a company is a brand should really engineer itself around who you're trying to serve. And if that's getting out of date, the competitors are starting to take some of that market share off of you, or you're starting to lose your grip on the market, or there's too many competitors now fighting over the same pocket of client. Like that's when you really need to start looking at adapting your branding. But to answer your other question, when's the right time to brand? There isn't one. It's like a myth, right? Like, I agree with you. I think, if a client was, or someone was trying to start a brand and they're waiting to get their logo before they start their business, I would say start your business. I had a business way before I had a logo. I had clients paying me multiple 10 figures a month before I had my logo. Like there's a quote from David Ogilvy and he says, if you start a business with a logo, you started late. Right? So like, yeah, logo is important. Yeah, branding's important, but you can get a hell of a lot done in a company before you brand it. Yeah. You can make millions of dollars as a savvy entrepreneur before you brand anything. Branding is really about your company needing to really create a perception for some reason, and that's where you need to inject branding. If your company's not creating the right reaction or the right perception in the mind of your target audience, that's when you need to start bringing some strategy into the fold.
What's up, Dream Nation? Have you ever wondered how far ahead your life would have already been if you had got access to this type of content at a younger age? Look, this is why I need your help. I'm trying to build the #1 personal development platform out there to teach you guys the tips, tricks, and attitude of what it takes to live your dream life and to bring the type of education that we all wish we had in school. This show only grows by word of mouth and new subscribers, so it would mean the world to me if you could smash that subscribe button right now, leave us a 5-star written review or drop a comment below and share this episode with a friend. I would be forever grateful. All right, now let's get back into this episode. I say like when I mentor people, I ask them, what's the very first thing, like the most important thing when it comes to business?
Yeah.
And the first thing you need to do, and a lot of people will go that, I need a logo. I need to get a brand name.
You need money.
I need to register my company. I need to create an ABN. All this fucking shit.
You need clients.
Websites. I'm like, no, you need to go and sell shit, man.
Yeah.
You just got to go and sell something to someone.
Yeah.
And just get that first sale and then start to actually reinvest it back in and grow this. Like if I look at what we've done, first thing I did always was just make money and then put the money back into marketing, market the things I sold, but make it better this time.
Yeah.
And just keep doing that. And then when we've got some extra money, how can we just make the experience better now and the brand a little bit better now? Yeah. And then it's like this reciprocal sort of make money, market it, improve the brand quality. Make money, market it, improve the brand quality and the experience, and just continually cycle. Mixed with a bit of, I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm just figuring it all out as I'm going.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the strategy, right?
It's pretty accurate. And that's like, even like my company, right? It's just an experiment going right. Like I think a lot of the reason why I'm here is because I just said, fuck it, let's go. Like, let's just start. I just started making content and then I got DMs saying, I like your stuff. How do I do it for myself? And then I just threw a number out and then they're like, okay. So like my first entourage of clients were just people that liked my stuff and were willing to pay me to do it for them.
So you just leaned into the things that you were good at and you were interested in, which is
it just worked out for me by doing that. Yeah. And what I noticed was as I was making content for these clients, I would say to them, what colors do you want me to use? They would say, well, we don't know. What font do you want me to use? I don't know. I don't have a font.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what am I going to do for your logo? Oh, can you design me a logo? Great. When we do this content, where are we sending the leads? Oh, yeah, I don't have a website. So that's the reason I was able to build a branding agency was because I gathered enough people that wanted to do content with me. But then they all realized that they didn't have a good brand. So then I actually became a branding agency so I could help supplement their content and then realize that that's the thing I'm great at. So now we don't even do content creation. We just build brands.
Right. Yeah. I've seen one of your things where you said in the beginning you started doing this and this and this and this and this and this and this.
I did a lot of stuff in the beginning. Yeah.
And then overnight you stopped all of it, took a massive pay cut and focused just on branding.
Yeah. Went all in.
Talk to us about what was those early stages when you were like, you want to do all of it. Talk to me about that transition and how that was. Because for someone to go, I'm going to say no to my customers and take a pay cut is ballsy, and you must have been really certain about what you're doing. Yeah,
I think so. We were selling content creation kits. That was how I started my whole agency. Was people would pay me a retainer every month. I would write their content. I would workshop what we're going to do together with them. I would graphically design everything. I would just pick their colors, pick their fonts. I would just design it for them. I'm like, here's what we're doing. So I was basically doing brand identity, brand strategy, design, but just not even asking the client what they wanted, just doing it for them. The problem was I'd do all this work and then the client would say, I don't like it. Can we change this? Can we change that? Right. So then I started to learn, okay, well, I need to do workshops. I need to discover what the client wants to do for their visual direction. And then I started reading all the books. I started listening to all the podcasts. I started following all the teachers, paying all the coaches and consultants. And then I spent like an ungodly amount of money self-educating myself on branding and creating branding material for all my clients. And then it started getting results. They started getting hundreds of thousands of followers. And I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing. Then they started asking me to brand their companies. Can you do a logo for my program? Can you do a logo for my company? And it just started naturally happening. What I realized was I was really phenomenal at inventing the strategy and the concept and the psychology of developing their brand identity, their brand vocabulary. The problem with content creation was clients were forever tinkering. So you would create a batch of material for a client, but then they're like, I don't want to post these 18. I only want to post these 8. They would just slow down the whole process. And I felt like I was babysitting people for their content and they weren't willing to post anything because they were discomfortable with everything, but they weren't willing to write their own material. They weren't willing to do their own photography. They just wanted me to do everything, but wanted me to guess what they wanted. Yeah. Which was extremely problematic as an agency owner. If you have 46 clients that don't know what they want, don't want to get involved, don't want to do any work, just want you to do it all for them. But when you do it for them, they don't like it, right? So I was like, this is a bad business model. But what I realized was a great business model was, well, they let me build their brands and they get involved with that process because that's easy enough for them to get involved with. And it's high ticket and once it's complete, the client moves on and we move on to the next project, which I loved. I actually didn't like working on the same projects on repeat. I liked jumping into something new constantly with the team. But yeah, we just found out the business model was actually more fun for me and more fulfilling for our team and more enjoyable and more profitable just to build the brands. So then we actually turned around and said to all of our content creation clients, we're closing shop on content creation. We're going all in on brand development, which was terrifying. But I had an inclination that I could sell enough of it that I could pay the bills with and figure it out later. So we, shut down all of our content creation clients and opened up our calendar. And then I just started selling branding kits. And I've been doing that for 3 years. Yeah.
I love it. So the company's been going for 3 years. Is that right?
4 years, including the content creation side of it. But 3 years as officially a branding agency. Yeah.
So I did see, so you went to 38 different schools.
36, yeah.
36 different schools, living out of cars at times.
Yeah.
You mentioned before at a foster home. It sounds like everything before you've created this wildly successful life and business, things were a bit challenging.
Yeah, they still are when you run a business.
Yeah.
I find a lot of comfort in chaos. So, I look at my childhood and even though it is quite confronting, like I think there's so many gifts that came from such a challenging childhood. It taught me independence at a young age, taught me how to read people at a young age. It taught me how to be a great communicator at a young age. So I think, being in and out of foster care and moving schools all the time, I got really good at adapting myself to new environments consistently. I got really good at adapting to conflict and confrontation and discomfort. Like discomfort just felt like normal, everyday emotions for me. It wasn't something that was strange. And I think in business, everything's uncomfortable in business. Every time you hire someone, every time you expand, every time you introduce a new product, every time you change trajectories as a company, it's very uncomfortable. But I find it maybe more natural to make those adjustments than maybe most, I think, because of my childhood.
Yeah. So it's all the blessings in it all.
I think so. I like to look at it as like a gift. My childhood was a gift to allow me to do what I do now and the way I do it. Yeah.
Where did you start to learn all business? Like, is this your first business?
I would say technically yes, if you don't include MLM.
Take us back to the beginning. Where did entrepreneurship begin for you?
So I think for me, probably an MLM, dude. So
how old were you?
I was 21.
That's when I started.
Yeah. It's a good age to start doing MLM. You don't have kids and, you're young, you got a lot of energy, you'll work hard. But yeah, I joined a community called ACN, and the reason this happened is actually the guy you met before I came in here with, Kalen. I met him when I was 19 working in like a t-shirt shop. And I thought he was really cool. And he thought I was an idiot. And we dropped him off home with some friends. And I was like, man, we should hang out sometime. He's like, yeah, maybe. And he handed me like a plastic bag with like 60 books in it, like personal development books. And he said, if you want to hang out, read all these books in a week. Otherwise, don't ever talk to me ever again. Like really weird interaction, right? Like,
Pretty rough.
yeah. So I remember ringing him like 2 weeks later, and I said, look, I didn't read 60 books, but I read half of one, and that book was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. So I read that book, and I was like, oh, money's not evil. Like growing up poor and in and out of foster care, you think money's like, you know, it's something for rich people, and rich people are assholes, and like you just have this like false perception of what people with money are. And I remember in that moment realizing money's not a bad thing. I probably need to figure out how to get money. So I started thinking about like, well, okay, I can't invest money because I don't have any. I can't start a big business because how do I even start that? But I could probably become self-employed. Like that was like the first idea in my head. And I remember I asked him, I'm like, hey, do you know anyone that can help me make money? He's like, no, but I know this other guy. So then I rang him. I was like, hey, man, do you know any ways I can make extra money? He goes, I know a guy. So then he contacted me to a guy in MLM, and his name was Ben Watson Brown. And I had a coffee with him, and he sat down and was like, hey, man, like here's the business model. Basically what you do is you pay $500, you join the business, you swap all your electronic phone services across, and you start to pay yourself a dividend of that. Then if you sign up another rep, and they sign up services, you get paid a dividend of what they sign up. And I was like, this is fucking great. I'll find it $500. Sold my Xbox, jumped in. 2 years later, I recruited over 2,600 people in my organization.
Nice.
And I just learned that in MLM, for me, it was a matter of, and this is what I figured out. How do you sell MLM? Well, you sit down with someone, you figure out what they want, and you sell them what they want. You don't sell them MLM. You sell them what they want. Like, what do you want? I want financial freedom. I want a house. I want to go on holidays. I want the ability to quit my job, whatever that is. It's like, okay, how do we use this system to help you get that? And that's how I sold 2,600 people into the organization. But what that taught me was like event management, team coordination, leadership, how to speak, how to influence, how to talk, how to make content, you know, how to train people to actually succeed. So I started to become an educator and a teacher. And I think like, you know, I had some success in that. I figured out a lot about what I was capable of through MLM. Yeah.
It's such a, like, still to this day, like I'm not affiliated in any network marketing companies at all anymore.
Same. Yeah.
But still to this day, if people come to me and they're like, I don't know what I want to do in my life, but I want to be successful, and they don't have a good skill.
Yeah.
You know, they're not like I'm tech savvy, I can understand ads or I can sell, and they're just like, I was a tradie before I started. Somebody like me, no high income skill set or nothing yet. I still tell them, go and do a 2-year apprenticeship in a network marketing company. Yeah. Because you'll start learning personal development. You'll also start to learn committing to yourself. You'll start learning some time management. You'll start to actually understand a little bit of having responsibilities as a business owner. You've got to show up. You've got to then sell. You got to market. You got to lead teams. You have to speak. You have to communicate. You have to manage it. All these things. And it was like, I even talked to Les Brown. I said, Les, where did you learn all? Because you're like the #1 motivational speaker in the world. Where did you learn how to become this great speaking? He goes, in network marketing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He built network marketing for like 30 years or something.
Wow.
He started in, he might have done ACN.
Wow.
I forget, but yeah, he was
ACN's pretty old, yeah.
Yeah, he's like an OG from the start. I think he did Amway and stuff. And
yeah, Robert Kiyosaki did MLM. Yeah. Grant Cardone did MLM. Oprah Winfrey did MLM.
Warren Buffett owns a couple MLM companies.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I'm almost certain I could be totally fucking wrong here, but I'm almost certain he bought Mary Kay. Yeah. But then, like, you look at Mary Kay was also selling shit in Myer and stuff. Yeah. And then over the past decade, they actually switched to an MLM model. Yeah. Because they're like, that was actually, which it is sort of the way products and stuff are spread these days, as we were saying, like, through people. But how did you, because my first few years in network marketing was fucking hard. Yeah. I sucked so bad. Yeah. like I think I enrolled like 9 people my first year.
Yeah.
And because of my boxing background, I used to just had this resilient attitude being like, it's not over until I literally stop this. So it took me probably about 2 to 2.5 years to actually get into momentum. And then that's how I quit my job, moved to Mexico. I was financially free by 23.
Wow.
And then I was the number one incomer in the company under 25.
Wow.
So it took me a few years, but about 4 years. But I'm like, fuck, I could have gone to university or I could have built my own business, built a 6-figure residual income and learn all these skills and these experiences and relationships. But what was the biggest thing you learned from in the network marketing days?
I think it's a lot of the stuff you just said. I think it's like learning that you're capable of doing these things, right? Like for me, before MLM, I was like, I didn't know I could speak. I didn't know I could sell. I didn't know I could lead. I didn't know I could run an event. I didn't have that much responsibility thrust upon me. So like when you work as an employee, you don't get anything thrust upon you until you get promoted. But when you do MLM, you self-promote. Yeah. It's like, you want a pay raise? Work harder. Yeah. You want to become a leader? Well, become a leader. Like it's like you have to self-build yourself. And I think that MLM is a great place to start incubating those skills because you'll never get it in an employment situation. But in an MLM, your paycheck is completely dependent on how you show up. Do you show up early? Do you put in the work? Do you make the phone calls? Do you do the thing? Do you do the keynotes? And I think MLM is a great incubator for entrepreneurs. Yeah. And anyone could do it. It's like $300, $400, $500 a join. You're surrounded by people that are obsessed with personal development, that are constantly pushing themselves. They have conferences, consistently. So I haven't done MLM in years, but I would say for sure, if anyone wants to learn the skill set, I think it's a great place for someone to, even if you fail terribly, it's a great place to start understanding what it's like to build a business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Like it helped me flex my entrepreneurial muscle. Helped me actually because I didn't know a product. I didn't know anything. I didn't have social media. I had like 400 friends on Facebook. Yeah. I had to just learn these things. And I really think if I had gone from that to entrepreneurship straight away, you get fucking destroyed. Yeah. Because like I was able to screw up so many things there. Yeah. And eat my overhead. Like just, like you don't invest. Like you have a monthly consumable thing that it's. Yeah. But what I noticed was there was so many people, and it sounds like definitely not promoting it. But anyway, I think people know I'm not involved anymore. But yeah, it's not
illegal, by the way. Yeah. It's called direct selling. There's accreditations.
I would have so many people that would be like, it taught me how to really deal with hate. Oh yeah, really fucking good. Because I had people that would be like, oh, but only the top 1% make all the money, and I'm like, well, yeah, isn't it lucky I'm in the top 1%? Isn't it lucky that when I enrolled, my account got the lucky number? Yeah, that was gonna be the successful one. And for my first early years, I would look at that. I was like, why is everyone else way more successful than me? I'm working. And then what I realized was every single time I thought I was working, I was doing fuck all. Yeah. So every single time I wanted to go to the next level, I realized that there's a new level that I actually hadn't got to yet. I'm like, oh, I can do more. It started with me first going, oh, I can actually, when I come home from my job, I can work on my business. I didn't know that. I thought you had to rest. Like, oh, I can work. And then, oh my God, on a Saturday, I can work my business. On a Sunday, I can work my business. And these were the first things, were just becoming resilient. But dealing with people who would try and just tear you down over and over and over and over and over. And it's made it really easy getting into this world now, because sometimes my partner will say to me, she's like, how do you just handle some like hard conversations? I'm like, oh, it's nothing compared to the losers I had to go through for years, right? Just the resilience. But you crush it there. Crush your agency now. I'm curious, have you been able to look back and discover, like, is there like a formula? Have you put together a formula or a strategy or a recipe that has allowed you to become as successful as you are?
Yeah, I think it's, for me and my experience, is you can find a lot of success in just having a gut instinct of like, I'm going to try this thing. And I think so many people stop at that moment. Oh, but what will my friends think? What if it doesn't work? What if, the thing I'm teaching now is what we call the 90-day brand plan. It's just post content for 90 days. But usually people go, about what? I'm like, anything. Like, force yourself to post something about yourself as an individual, as a personal brand every day for 90 days. One or two things will happen. You'll quit and you'll be like, entrepreneurship sucks. Or two, you'll be like, man, for the first 48 days, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just posting content every day, trying stuff because none of it felt right. Then by day like 48, they're like, it clicked. I knew what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be. Because I think if you post content every day, you're forcing yourself to ask yourself at every moment of every day, why do I exist and what am I teaching and why am I here? Like if you put yourself under the spotlight long enough, you'll find the thing that you want to do. And I think so many people try to find the thing before they start. But I would just say, as weird as it sounds, start and you'll find the thing. And a weird exercise you can do, you don't have to join MLM, but you could just start producing content every day and then put yourself under the spotlight to find the thing. But a weird fact about MLM that I love, which was 58% of people that stay in one organization in MLM for more than 10 years become millionaires.
Yep.
Which is a high percentage. It's like, it's a long time to commit 10 years, but like,
I to stay in a job for 10 years as well.
Yeah, exactly, man. That's another good one. But I think the beauty in that is it's like, well, there's only a 1% chance, but like every 100 people I would sign up to MLM, 2 people would actually show up to the meetings properly.
Yeah.
So it's like actually showing up and saying, I'm not succeeding, but I'm giving it my damn best crack. And I think so many people don't do that for themselves. But if you just look at MLM as a framework of doing that, 2 out of 100 might show up. How many people have you met that say they want to start a business, but they just don't show up? It's a weird concept, but are you showing up? And an easy way to show up is like, I'm going to make content today. But if people go, well, what do I post about? I'm going to wait till tomorrow. I'm going to figure it out first. And it's like, no. Just force yourself to dive in and your brain goes into an extremely different place. If you force yourself to go, I have to do this today, your brain's going to force itself to go into an extremely wildly new and creative place that it's never been in before. And it's in that territory that you're going to find the thing, that you're going to find the business, that you're going to find the ideas. Until you throw your mind into that place, I don't think people really figure out how to make money.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah.
What is it you wish small businesses knew when it comes to branding?
I wish they knew the value of giving away everything for free. And I mean that. I mean like so many people listen to that and they go, yeah. What else though? I'm like, no. If you actually just gave away amazing shit for free every day, you would have a lot of people paying attention. And then that would accumulate over time and then you could eventually sell them something. So many people try to go straight to monetization. And I think for me, in my case, I made content for 8 weeks giving away value before people were like, hey, this is pretty cool. Can you do this for me? And I think if you're so good that people start asking you how they can pay you, then you found a business. That's how I started a branding agency. It wasn't by planning it. It was by doing the work and then it just kind of accidentally showed up. Like I was just being valuable. I was just like giving away things of value consistently enough until people started to say, hey, this is pretty cool. How do we collaborate? Yeah.
If you were to go back and start everything all over again, knowing everything you know now, what would you do different?
I think I would have hired people far sooner. I would have thought a lot bigger. I would have made a lot more phone calls. I would have asked for more help. I would have showed up with a lot more energy and a lot more intention and a lot more confidence. I think in the beginning, I lacked confidence. I was not willing to ask people for help. I was hesitant and self-skeptical. I think if I could go back now, I would just do it 10 times faster because I would be willing to ask for help. I'd be willing to back myself. You know what I mean? It's like in hindsight, it's great, but hindsight's a bitch because, you know, I didn't have the tools I have now back then.
Yeah.
But I think if anyone's considering starting, like ask for help, man. People really do love to help people. If you've got a good community around you, this is a great way to test if your community's shit or not. Like your friends, family, and network will either help or hinder you dependent on the person you've been up until today. If you ring everyone you know and they're not willing to help you, it's a sign that you've not been valuable to them. If you ring everyone you know and you ask for help and they turn around and go, I'm right there with you, what do you need? You've been an amazing human being up until that point. And this is something I used to teach in MLM, was your community and your network will either help or hinder you based on the person you've been up until today.
Yeah.
Right?
Found that out the hard way.
Yeah. Acting like a selfish brat like I did when I started MLM, I called my friends and my family. No one wanted to help me.
Yeah.
No one trusted me. No one believed me because I wasn't being valuable to my community. I wasn't being useful. I wasn't being helpful up until that point. It's quite a stark realization to realize that you're not being as helpful to your community that you could be. And the most successful entrepreneurs I met in Mexico and overseas are always people that give away tremendous value to the people around them. Like tremendous value, like giving not money away, but like giving their time, their love, their attention, their advice, like giving something away to the people closest to them. And that reciprocates. And I think that, if I could go back and teach myself a lesson at the beginning, it would be more willing to ask people to help me, and I would do more for others at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a saying that you'll be either heavily rewarded or heavily punished for the person you've been before starting a business when you start.
Yep.
Because the first people you got to go talk to is people close to you. And if you've been a good person, you provide a lot of value, they're going to want to help. And it sounds like you're the same. When I started, it was up until 21, I was just drinking and partying every weekend.
Yeah. Same.
All my friends were the same. It's like, hey, you want to do a business? The fuck you know anything about business?
Yeah.
I don't know, actually. Nothing.
Yeah.
And I had to start from scratch and start reinventing myself and being a person of value.
Yeah.
On that, you were just in Mexico. You had breakfast or lunch with Tom Bilyeu.
Yeah.
What's the biggest takeaway you took from Tom Bilyeu?
Tom looks at things in a very measured way. I learned from Tom that he looks at things in a very, it's almost like logic, but like in a way that's emotionally endorsed. I don't know if that makes sense, but like he's very logical in his approach, but he only uses it toward things he finds passionate about. So like he loves cinematography, and I think the reason he got into business was because his passion for storytelling. And his initial means was to go into business to make money so he could go back to investing that into creativity. So he's actually a creative type individual that has learned how to use business to make money. And I learned from Tom that there's an extreme level of success that can come from someone who's a creative type that forces themselves to work in the business climate. And at the same time, there's an extremely valuable toolkit that comes from someone who's in business that learns how to be creative. Like I think if you can combine creativity with business and actually fuse the two together effectively, you can make a lot of money. Like if you really understand creativity and you really understand business and you understand the conduit of how to make both of them work together, that's what I learned from sitting down with Tom. Like he was explaining things to me about anime and creating comics and starting a gaming company. Like the guy's involved in a lot of stuff, but it's all creatively fueled. Yeah. It's all about storytelling. It's all about human connective tissue. And yeah, I think he looks at the world logically, but he understands the power of emotion. And that was a really cool takeaway from me. Yeah.
Love it. Dude, this has been sick. And there's so much value you've given. So where can everybody find you on social media and even come do business with you?
Yeah, so just Dain Walker on Instagram. You can DM me there. I will reply personally. Otherwise, LinkedIn, or you can find my email, or you can just go to dainwalker.com. Yeah.
Love it, dude. All right, final question. If you were to go back to your 18-year-old self and give him 30 seconds of advice, what would it be?
My 18-year-old self, I was very lost, and I think I would tell him that he has good creative ideas that he needs to trust his instincts on, and I would tell the 18-year-old version of myself to stop listening to the people around me and listen to myself instead. I was very much influenced too much at that age by others, I think. Yeah. Yeah.